Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Geraghty.
And welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch, along with Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. We have good, bad, and crazy martinis for conservatives today. All of it brought to you by Quip. You need to get a better electric toothbrush. You need to get Quip, and to do that, you need to go to getquip.com/martini. The brushes start at just $25, and you can get your first refill pack for free when you go to getquip.com/martini. So, Jim, on to the martinis in just a moment. Yesterday, you and I both braved our way to work because there had been some snow Saturday and Sunday in the Washington, D.C. area. The whole government was shut down on Monday because of the weather, so I'm not sure who you blame for that. I don't know if you could still blame the Trump or the Democrats or the wall or the whatever you want for that, but everything was canceled Sunday. Everything was canceled Monday, and a 2-hour school delay today. So for a few inches of snow, man, the carnage is really piling up.
Yeah, the term I heard tossed around yesterday, Greg, was snurlow. Say snow and furlough on the same day for all the federal workers. Look, I got a couple of readers who said, I saw D.C. was closed again. I'm like, look, it started snowing around, say about 2 in the afternoon on Saturday. Didn't stop until Sunday night. Most places in this area got anywhere from 7, 8, 9, 10 inches. This was a solid snowfall. I'm not going to give the Authenticity Woods School District any grief about closing. But today, within 24 hours, as much as I complain about this place, they can clear most of the roads, particularly when it stops snowing. So there's absolutely no snow on the roads today. Yeah, a little icy, people got to be careful. And naturally, we had to have a 2-hour delay. Just letting everybody also know, Friday's looking bad too, so the kids might get 2.5, maybe a whole 3.5 days of school this week. We'll see how it goes. And you pointed out that we're working, Greg, but I just let everyone know the downside of working from home most days is you can't tell the boss, I just can't make it to my home office. Traffic in the kitchen is terrible.
And Monday's a holiday coming up, so Martin Luther King Day. So the kids might remember what school looks like eventually. Man. All right, let's move on to our good martini now. And, Jim, I'm a little bit torn on this one, so I'm curious to see what you think. So let's start with Fox News. Congressman Steve King, Republican of Iowa, was removed from all of his committee assignments by House Republicans Monday evening following bipartisan condemnation of his recent remarks on white supremacy and white nationalism. King was serving on the Committee on Agriculture, the Committee on Small Business, and the Committee on the Judiciary, according to his website. Quote, "We will not tolerate this type of language in the Republican Party or in the Democratic Party as well," House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy told reporters. "I watched what Steve King said, and we took action." In a formal statement, McCarthy said King's comments were beneath the dignity of the party of Lincoln and the United States of America. His comments call into question whether he will treat all Americans equally without regard for race and ethnicity. House Republicans are clear. We are all in this together as fellow citizens equal before God and the law. As Congressman King's fellow citizens, let us hope and pray earnestly that this action will lead to greater reflection and ultimately change on his part. Congressman King responding, saying, "Leader McCarthy's decision to remove me from committees is a political decision that ignores the truth. The truth is as follows. One of my quotes in the New York Times story has been completely mischaracterized. Here's the context I believe accurately reflects my statement. In a 56-minute interview, we discussed the changing use of language in political discourse. We discussed the worn-out label of racist and my observation that other slanderous labels have been increasingly assigned to conservatives by the left, who injected into our current political dialogue terms such as Nazi, fascist, white nationalist, white supremacist. Western civilization. How did that language become offensive?" So he's saying that was specifically related to Western civilization. Why did I sit in classes teaching me about the merits of our history and our civilization? So he says he wasn't suggesting that those other terms shouldn't be controversial, and he denounces them. So, Jim, is the man without committees. We've seen people get stripped of committees before. I think the last person to not have any committee assignments was Jim Traficant after he got convicted of multiple felonies that sent him to prison from Ohio. Colorful character for those who remember him. So on the one hand, you can see why the Republicans apparently aren't giving him the benefit of the doubt here. He's had a number of issues in the past, and so they're trying to send a clear message. At the same time, there's 500,000 people in Iowa that are not getting full representation in some ways, but maybe the pressure is now on King to rectify that, according to House Republicans, by letting someone else get the job. I don't know. What do you make of the decision and the fallout here?
Yeah, if this is overcompensation on the part of House Republicans, then it's overcompensation that comes from cutting Steve King a lot of slack over the years. Earlier in the week, we talked about a previous comment where he basically said, when did any other culture contribute as much as Western culture and Western civilization? And I kind of went down the list of human history that there are plenty of civilizations that contributed quite a bit before Western civilization even got rocking and rolling. So it kind of just looks terribly ignorant, and also just kind of this, well, look, there's nothing wrong with having pride in Western civilization. But when you start kind of suggesting or implying that everybody else's culture and civilization adds no value, has nothing to contribute, that's when people start ascribing sinister motives to you. Look, he's not saying the quote is inaccurate. He's saying it's taken out of context. And look, part of being a politician is you have to be careful about how you say those things, particularly a highly charged topic like this. Again, if this had been a one-time issue, one-time slip of the tongue, people would be much more forgiving. And the third thing, which I think kind of stands out to a bunch of folks, for a long time, King had a Confederate flag on his desk. Now, whatever your opinions of the Confederate flag, I don't think you can say Stephen King was doing it out of Southern pride, because last time I checked my geography, Iowa was not part of the South, right? So these things start adding up where you start saying, it's just coincidental. He just really likes Confederate. It's not part of the Iowa state flag. He doesn't have any roots back there. People start interpreting these things as either dog whistles or some sort of coded signal to white nationalists and group like that. The other thing is, look, if you look back a whole bunch of Steve King comments, comparing, illegal immigrants to dirt. Now, look, you and I are strongly opposed to illegal immigration. This is a crime. There should be punishments for the crime. You enter the country illegally, you got to get deported. But we don't think that human beings are dirt, right? This is literally dehumanizing language. You can throw on the list. There's a comment about, guys coming over the border with 600 pounds of marijuana. By the way, Greg, could you lift 600 pounds of marijuana?
No. Not all at once.
You're a strong guy. You're a healthy guy. But, most people, 600 pounds is a lot for anybody, much less to be carrying them over the border. His argument that they have calves the size of grapefruits. I don't know if he's been studying Men's Fitness magazine. Steve King says a lot of weird things that really end up in this. It easily interpreted as being hateful or xenophobic or something like that. And this isn't a one strike you're out, two strikes you're out. We're now in the 6, 7, 8 strikes you're out. And at that point, you got to, is this unfair to the members of people in his district losing the representation? Yeah, but you know what? I mean, this is part of the consequence if you reelect Steve King. At some point, how many passes can a guy get before the rest of the party has to start inoculating itself? Because this guy doesn't have the wherewithal to recognize he's playing with dynamite every time he brings up immigration and racial issues. Look, pal, whether you like it or not, we live in a world where any Republican's going to get tarred with your words every single time. Is it fair? No. But on the other hand, Republicans do have to say, look, what this guy said is not in keeping with our values. Maybe this is an overreaction, but look, King could have avoided this scenario by using better judgment at a whole bunch of different points along the way. I
completely agree with that. The question is, if you're willing to do this, are you willing to just force him out entirely?
That's kind of a fair question, which is, that the other thing is this may be a situation where it's a better, intermediate step would have been censure. Let everybody get on the record and say, Steve King, this is a dumb thing to say. What the hell are you thinking? Put it out there and then keeping that. But also maybe something like this ends up becoming one more and we're going to expel you. That we just can't have you going off and doing this and creating these mini controversies all the time. Just look, it's a big Congress. There are a lot of Republicans. I'm sure there are other Republicans in that district who might make good congressmen. And just the question of it's how long does the party accept you as this constant controversy and liability before they start taking action to say, look, we can't be associated with this guy in any way, shape, or form.
An interesting question. And he already had a primary challenger from what I understand before this controversy with the New York Times. So I'm also curious to see if Kevin McCarthy thinks stripping of his committee assignments is going to stop the Democratic majority from pushing forward with a censure resolution. My guess is it's not. I think he didn't want an on-the-record vote to make it awkward for some of his members, and he thought this was the smartest and smoothest way to do it. But I'm guessing the story's not over yet.
My fear is that King, having felt like he's been on the outs and unfairly tarred and expelled from his colleagues, that this radicalizes him, and then he starts embracing this stuff wholeheartedly, which would just make things worse, although it would make the decision a little bit easier for the Republican caucus.
Well, in the meantime, if this whole story leaves a really bad taste in your mouth, we've got some good news for you. Quip is the toothbrush to get that bad taste out of your mouth. The new year means new resolutions, and we've got one you're working on, at least we hope you are, twice every day. Your oral health. And with a Quip electric toothbrush, sticking to good habits is simple. The guiding features are like a built-in support system for better brushing.
There are a whole bunch of reasons why you should use Quip. It's got sensitive sonic vibrations for an effective clean that's gentle on your sensitive gums. A lot of people brush too hard, and some electric toothbrushes are just too abrasive. You have built-in 2-minute timer pulses, which every 30 seconds remind you when to switch sides and to help you to clean your whole mouth evenly. According to studies, apparently up to 90% of us don't brush for a full 2 minutes, or we don't clean evenly. A multi-use cover works as a stand, it mounts to mirrors, and it slides over your bristles to pack and protect your Quip on the go. There are no wires, no clunky charger, and it can run for 3 months on just a single charge. Brush heads are automatically delivered on a dentist-recommended schedule of every 3 months for just $5. A friendly reminder when it's time to refresh and stay committed to your oral health. Apparently, 3/4 of us use old, worn-out bristles that are ineffective. Finally, Quip is one of the first electric toothbrushes that are accepted by the American Dental Association. They're backed by more than 25,000 dental professionals, and they have thousands of verified 5-star reviews. I myself have a Quip toothbrush. I enjoy it. I use it. I do appreciate those little 30-second pulses saying enough on the right, now get started on the left. Yes, you can insert a pun here that I do too much on the right and not enough on the left. Enough on the top, enough on the bottom. It's just the best toothbrush I've ever had. And I'd recommend it to anyone.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I asked Mrs. Corombos yesterday, what would be your greatest praise for the Quip? She's like, I love the fact that they send the brushes and I don't have to think about when to switch them. And that way, like you just said, you get the best brushing all the time. So that's just some of the reasons why we love Quip and why over 1 million happy, healthy mouths do too. Quip starts at just $25. And if you go to getquip.com/martini right now, you can get your first refill pack for free. That's your first refill pack free at getquip.com/martini, getquip.com/martini. All right, Jim, on to our bad martini now. And for that, we go to the pages of National Review Online and one Jim Geraghty. One of my favorite things about this campaign season already, Jim, is your very interesting, very unique take on all these Democrats piling into the clown car for 2020 and revealing things that many of us who think we know these folks pretty well and where they stand politically that we don't know before. You've done it already on a number of folks, and today you do it for Kamala Harris, the Democratic California senator who's about to officially launch her presidential campaign. You came up with 20 for Senator Harris. What are a couple to whet the appetite here for folks?
Sure. Well, for those who are, this is not necessarily part of any organized plan. I think I just decided, campaign season for the Democrats is picking up. Campaigns and elections is part of my beat here at National Review. And I was like, I guess it's about time to start writing profiles of these folks. And I started thinking about, what's the most fun part of the profile is the, hey, I didn't know that. The things you actually learn about them by doing deep dives, by actually reading through their utterly boring campaign books, going through the newspaper archives, going through all their old interviews that they probably have forgotten from earlier in their career, and saying, all right, here's stuff you probably didn't know about this person. And not everything is meant to be, this is why this candidate is the worst person in the world. I thought it was a very funny thing. Up in Vermont, they had a Bernie Sanders sound-alike contest. And some comedian won by imitating Bernie Sanders, insisting that on my campaign, all staffers get pizza and cheesy bread. Cheesy bread is a right, not a privilege. And it was just, this is my way of saying, hey, I realize I write for a conservative audience. You probably should know more about the Democratic contenders. Here's stuff you probably don't know. Wrote about Elizabeth Warren about a week ago. Didn't get into the Native American stuff because you already know about that. What you probably don't know are the things she wrote in her early books and stuff like that. Today I decided to go into Kamala Harris. And you might know she was the district attorney for San Francisco. You might know she was the state attorney general. What you probably don't know, as some people have characterized it, is, the Kamala Harris, is very much like, on the one hand, she's got this image of being a tough law and order candidate. She is a career prosecutor. On the other hand, her choice of which so as a result of this, she is very much in favor of civil asset forfeiture, which in fact there's been kind of this bipartisan consensus against. This is when prosecutors can seize your property before convictions, and it's one of those things where this was originally introduced to go after the drug kingpins, to seize their yachts and their properties and their fancy cars. And everyone kind of liked it when it was that, but then it started being used against ordinary citizens, and all of a sudden it began to look like a fertile territory for prosecutorial abuse. Not Catherine Harris. Boy, there's a Freudian slip. Kamala Harris does not see that as this way. She's actually a big fan of civil asset forfeiture. But one of the things that jumped out to me is that she believes that if your kids don't go to school for if there's truancy, the parents should be prosecuted. Now, on the one hand, this is the sort of thing that makes people say, yeah, all right, time to get tough on those kids and, those neglectful parents and all that stuff. Except, here's the thing. By the way, California has sent 2 mothers to prison because their children missed a lot of school. Now, I hate truancy as much as the next guy. I don't doubt that the state and the schools have a serious interest in reducing truancy. I do wonder, though, if a kid's not going to school on a regular basis, chances are there's a family problem. Chances are this is either, perhaps a single parent situation. Perhaps the parent has some condition that's causing them to not keep track of their kids. It's a problem. It's a tough situation. I don't know if you solve it by putting a parent in jail. I don't know if you solve it by giving a giant fine to the parent. Particularly I don't know if you help things by giving the parent a criminal record, which, as we all know, makes it much tougher to get a job in a whole bunch of places. The other thing is I have a very tough time with the idea of we're going to prosecute parents of truant children, but at the same time, Kamala Harris really does not have much interest in immigration enforcement. She has explicitly said that she does not believe she supported an illegal immigrant getting a law license. You can be in the country illegally but still practice law, apparently, in Kamala Harris's mind. In her first speech on the Senate floor, she declared an undocumented immigrant is not a criminal. Now, there are a lot of people saying, that's completely untrue. Well, if you enter the country illegally, yes, you're a criminal and it's criminal penalties, and there's no 2 ways about that. If you overstay a visa, that's technically considered a civil violation, but let's keep in mind they can still deport you over that. So I don't know, if you see deportation as inherently a criminal punishment, then she's not correct on this. But here's the thing. If you re-enter after being deported, or if you're working in this country without the proper legal papers and you entered illegally, that's a crime too. Falsifying documents, lying on work forms under penalty of perjury, that sort of thing. Only under very tenuous circumstances can she accurately say an undocumented immigrant is not a criminal. Generally, it's if you've overstayed a visa and you haven't left yet, the moment you're deported, then yes, you're not allowed to come back into the country without permission. Tough prosecutor, allegedly. Look, she did have a very nice conviction rate for felonies. Once you include all the plea bargains, when you look at the felony cases that went to trial, it's not nearly as impressive. One of the lower ones when it comes to large cities in California. Now, some folks have argued, look, it's San Francisco juries. You're going to have a tougher time with those. I suppose you might want to grade her on a curve with that. But all in all, like a whole bunch of combinations of very authoritarian, okay, not authoritarian, but very pro-police, very pro-expansion of police powers, but also refusing to enforce the law in certain cases, as I mentioned, with illegal immigrants, and also refusing to pursue the death penalty for gang members and folks who committed triple homicides, cop killers, things like that. California, there are a whole bunch of liberals in places like San Francisco, but a whole bunch of them, people who oppose the death penalty, you give them examples of some people gunning down families in cold blood, and all of a sudden, like, fry that guy. I'm fine with it. Give him the chair. She refused to do that. Received some pushback from the likes of Dianne Feinstein way back when. So there's this very interesting combination of being perceived to be tough on crime and utterly soft on other crimes, and it's kind of interesting about which ones she chooses are to be most tough on. She did get a big settlement with a whole bunch of bank specter in the housing issue. The number of people who got help from it was significantly lower than the hype would have you suggest. But interestingly, did not get prosecuted despite a recommendation from prosecutors underneath her, Greg.
Who's that?
Steven Mnuchin, our current Treasury Secretary. And of everything on my list that's going to give her grief in Democratic primary, that's probably the decision. And according to her, it's like, well, just the evidence wasn't there. The prosecutors underneath her certainly thought there was. I strongly suspect you'll hear more about this on the Democrat. First of all, so go read it. Fascinating stuff in there. I think this is a fuller picture of her. And I've been going through it. My conclusion, I was like, oh, Kamala Harris, she's a strong candidate. Oh, glowing resume. No. You really you look harder at her record. That is a target-rich environment for one of her primary rivals, or in the general election if she gets the nomination. So check it out and get to know the real Kamala Harris.
All right, let's move on to our crazy martini now. And speaking of senators running for the Democratic presidential nomination, we get this from Ed O'Keefe of CBS. Confirmed, Senator Gillibrand is expected to announce plans to form a 2020 Presidential Exploratory Committee on the Colbert Late Show on Tuesday, according to a person familiar with her thinking. I guess that's a step up from the Van Jones show, but to each their own. BuzzFeed says Senator Gillibrand on Saturday signaled to a group of about 20 influential women that she will run for president. Gillibrand made her intentions clear, said the source, who asked not to be identified. Although Gillibrand is not the only woman likely to run for president, she is the candidate whose campaign will most focus on gender. The New York senator's signature issues have been women's issues, such as how military sexual assault is prosecuted and Me Too in politics. Her outside group focuses on funding women candidates for office. So, Jim, we've talked before about how the fundraisers and the donors don't really like her too much. It's interesting that she thinks she's got a lane here. I'm not sure where she sees it, but what do you make of Gillibrand jumping in here?
Yeah, so for those wondering, when are you going to get the 20 things about Kirsten Gillibrand? But my guess is probably not for a while. I wrote about her last year, I want to say, when Vogue did this big glowing profile of her. And it was odd because it really, first of all, the editors of Vogue clearly fell in love with her. She got the fancy, glossy photo spread, just gushing about her for pages and pages. But the gist of it was the idea that Kirsten Gillibrand was some sort of centrist who could grab the middle, win over some segments of the right, and have appeal well beyond the traditional Democratic Party constituencies. And it never really proved that argument. And the big centerpiece of supporting evidence was her bid for the House back in 2006. She won a district that you could pretty accurately describe as being purple. But I mean, the problem, Greg, is that she was a different person then. And I don't mean like, short of transmogrification, she was pro-gun. She was much less, she was really tough on illegal immigrants, opposed driver's licenses for illegal immigrants. She was, not, the classic centrist Democrat on a whole bunch of cultural issues, in addition to being fairly, pro, the standard issue populist lefty that would win in a district like that. Then, of course, she got selected to fill Hillary Clinton's Senate seat back in 2009 when Hillary Clinton went off to become the Secretary of State. And ever since then, Kirsten Gillibrand has voted the way you'd expect a New York Democratic senator to vote. And I don't see much of anything in that makes you say, that's going to be a natural fit in Ohio. We wrote a little bit yesterday about how Florida seems to be trending right. In a year that was really lousy for Republicans, they hung on in the statewide races, only lost one U.S. House seat. I don't know if Kirsten Gillibrand will be a younger Hillary Clinton. I'm sure she's probably going to be a more charismatic Hillary Clinton. Not the hardest bar to clear. But in terms of voting record, platform, stances, all that kind of stuff, I don't think there's going to be that much difference to it. The Vogue profile, I again urge everyone to, maybe I'll put up a link to it later because it's pretty fascinating. The Vogue profile talks about how the house that she lives in, the tennis court is currently in a bad state of disrepair. She laments, we've been meaning to resurface it. I mean, Greg, haven't you been meaning to resurface the tennis court over at the stately Corombos Manor?
Yes. So hard to find a good contractor for that.
Right, because it's Vogue, it goes on and on about her fashion and her wardrobe and the antique furniture in her house. Look, the Gillibrands are wealthy. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but I don't know if that's going to make easy populist, I'm one of the folks type messaging for her. Oh, by the way, a good portion of that wealth came in a gift from her in-laws. Nothing inherently wrong with that, but again, it's going to, anytime she goes down to those diners in Iowa and New Hampshire and tries to play just one of the folks card, I don't think it's going to work particularly well for her. And then that whole thing, we're going to emphasize women's issues. Look, we talked about this a moment ago. If Kamala Harris wasn't in this race, if Elizabeth Warren wasn't in this race, maybe that'd be a really unique line. We're still talking about the possibility of Amy Klobuchar. Looking at that, I don't know if that's as unique as all that kind of stuff. And we mentioned earlier the problem. That she was one of the ones who pushed out Al Franken. I think you and I would rank that as one of the best things she's ever done. But this made her some serious enemies, including George Soros. And I just don't. There's some tough enemies to have in a Democratic primary. Now put in the fact she's not from a purple state. I think it's a state everybody knows they've got Democrats have in their back pocket. What does she offer that anybody else in the Democratic field doesn't? She's not even necessarily going to be the only Democratic senator from the Northeast. You got Cory Booker, Terry McAuliffe is thinking about running from Virginia. Bloomberg's in there in the special billionaire category. What's special about her? I don't know if anything's there, but hey, stranger things have happened.
What is it about this Senate seat that nobody's got any convictions and they just completely reinvent themselves as the circumstances warrant?
It might be something in the chair. We should just kind of check, have somebody just scan it, take samples.
I know for 24 years we had Pat Moynihan, who we didn't agree with a lot, but the guy was principled, and now ever since he retired, holy smokes, you can't get anybody in there who will hold the same position for more than 10 minutes. It's amazing.
The other thing, which one other thing I think as you're mentioning that Vogue profile, really just gushed about her retail politicking issues. The idea that women come up to her and feel like she's their best friend and all that stuff. Look, I've not watched a ton of Kirsten Gillibrand on the stump, but boy, I'm not seeing it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not the target demographic, not the target audience. Boy, they just sang about her just being wonderful on the stump, and we'll see. We'll see. Not seeing it yet.
We'll find out. The last New York senator didn't do that great in Iowa. I remember that much.
Iowans love New Yorkers.
Oh, yeah, totally. Hillary came in third in 2008, and she won on a remarkable series of coincidental coin flips in 2016. Yeah. But many more to jump in, I'm sure. Jim, have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. And don't forget to go to getquip.com/martini. Get your new Quip toothbrush starting at just $25. And when you go to getquip.com/martini, you get your first refill brush pack for free. Tune in again Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.